Have you ever felt the quiet exhaustion of living in other people's eyes? The endless calculation, measuring every word, every step, every gesture, hoping they will smile, nod, and approve of who you are? It feels safe at first, doesn't it? To be accepted, to be liked. But inside, beneath the mask, grows an emptiness, a hunger that no amount of validation can ever satisfy. The applause fades, the smiles vanish, and you are left alone with the haunting question, who am I when no one is watching? We are born into a world that teaches us to please, to bend, to shrink ourselves into the shape that fits their comfort. But what they never tell you is this: to be liked is cheap, fragile, and fleeting. To be respected is heavy, eternal, and unshakable. And sometimes, to be respected, you must be willing to be disliked. You must be willing to carry the silence, to endure the frowns, to stand as a storm in the face of their approval, because only then do you discover the darker, stronger current of power that lies within you, the kind that bends not to love, nor to hate, but to truth. Society has built an invisible stage, and from the moment we are children, we are pushed onto it. We are taught to perform, to smile when asked, to be agreeable even when our insides rebel, to make sure others are comfortable before we ever learn how to sit with our own discomfort. The truth is subtle but cruel. Most people are not raised to be themselves. They are raised to be liked. And so, every gesture becomes a calculation. Every decision runs through the filter of, will they approve? Will they accept me? Will they like me? It is a prison dressed as freedom, because at first glance it seems harmless to want others to see us in a good light, but the cost creeps in slowly, and it eats away at the very foundation of our character. To live, to be liked, is to live at the mercy of shifting winds. What they like today, they may dislike tomorrow. What they clap for in one season, they will mock in another. When you chase approval, you are never at rest, because approval is not an anchor. It is a leash tied to a hand that is not yours. Being liked sounds like a sweet goal, but beneath it lies fragility. To be liked is to base your worth on emotions that are unpredictable, uncontrollable, and shallow. Someone might like you because of how you look today, but dislike you for the same reason tomorrow. They might like you when you agree with them, but dislike you when you finally stand for your own truth. Liking is built on preference, and preference is as unstable as the human mind. This is why philosophers like Machiavelli warned that love is weak when compared to fear, because fear compels action, while love evaporates with mood. But even fear itself is not the highest ground. Respect is. Fear fades once the power shifts. Love withers when comfort disappears. But respect endures. Respect is carved out of your boundaries, your consistency, your refusal to bend in the wind of opinion. It is heavy, unyielding, and it does not depend on whether someone feels good about you. Respect is about whether they cannot ignore you, even if they wish they could. The tragedy is that many people never learn this difference. They live their whole lives in the soft cushion of being pleasant. They water themselves down so much that no sharp edge remains, nothing to resist or challenge, only a comfortable smile, and in doing so they become forgettable. The people who are liked may fill rooms, but the people who are respected change them. To be liked is to live in the shallow waters, admired for the surface. To be respected is to dive into the depths, where your very presence demands acknowledgement. The misconception here is enormous. People believe that if they are liked, they will be safe, loved, fulfilled. But in reality, being liked makes you dependent. It turns your worth into a public vote, and every day you must campaign to be approved of again. That is why those who live for approval are never truly at peace. They are in a constant election, begging for likes not just online, but in every room they walk into. Think about how fragile that life is. One wrong word, one unpopular opinion, one refusal to follow the crowd, and the likes begin to vanish. Suddenly, the same people who smiled at you yesterday turn their heads away. To live for being liked is to live as a shadow of yourself, always hiding from rejection, always fearing that one authentic choice might turn admiration into indifference. Respect does not work like that. Respect is earned precisely because of those moments. It grows when you say no where others say yes, when you draw a line others refuse to cross, when you hold your ground while others compromise theirs. Respect is not a performance. It is not about keeping peace or avoiding conflict. It is about standing so firmly in your truth that even those who dislike you cannot deny you. They may resent you, they may gossip about you, but deep down they will carry your presence with them, because respect, unlike liking, leaves a scar. Emotional immaturity is what makes us chase being liked. It is the echo of childhood, when we longed for the warmth of approval from parents, teachers, or friends. As children, it made sense. We needed guidance. We needed reassurance that we belonged. But to carry that into adulthood is to remain a child long after we have grown. Approval-seeking keeps us small, keeps us dependent, keeps us bending in ways that rob us of our strength. Maturity is when you recognize that you no longer need every hand to pat your back, no longer need every voice to sing your praises. Maturity is the quiet discovery that your worth is not determined by applause. Instead, it is forged by your capacity to stand alone in silence, even when the world withdraws its warmth. This is the line where liking fades and respect begins. Children want to be liked. Adults who awaken want to be respected. To be liked is easy but empty. It requires no great strength, only the willingness to blend in. You smile when expected, you agree when convenient, you hide your edges so you will not cut anyone. But what is the result? You become a copy, a reflection of whatever room you stand in. To be respected, however, is hard. It means carrying the weight of misunderstanding. It means living with people's disapproval. It means letting go of the desperate need to be embraced. But the reward is profound. Respect anchors you. It does not disappear when moods change. It does not depend on whether people are in the right emotional space to like you today. It is born of your consistency, your strength, your truth. And when you carry it, people remember you not because you pleased them, but because you refused to betray yourself in order to please them. Think back to the countless times you lowered your voice so it would not disrupt the room, the moments you forced a smile even though your heart was heavy, the days you swallowed your truth because the cost of honesty seemed too high. These moments seem small, even harmless at first, but they build up like dust in the corners of your soul, unnoticed until the weight becomes suffocating. You tell yourself it's easier this way, that keeping the peace is worth the silence of your spirit. Man, you are truly a peacemaker, yet, in the quiet of the night, when no one else is around, you feel the fracture. You sense the subtle betrayal of yourself. These are the invisible wounds that being liked carves into you. They do not bleed on the outside, but they tear at the inside. And every time you trade authenticity for approval, you chip away at your own reflection until you hardly recognize the person staring back. It is a life lived not in freedom, but in constant negotiation with the fear of being unwanted. And there comes a moment, though, when the weight of all those compromises breaks you open. It may arrive in a single piercing event, a friend betraying you despite all your sacrifices, a partner leaving even though you bent until you broke, a crowd turning its back the moment you spoke your truth. Or it may come slowly, like a dull ache growing louder with each year until it cannot be ignored. Either way, there is a tipping point. The realization hits. No matter how much you give, no matter how hard you try to be what they like, it is never enough. Their approval is a well with no bottom, and you have been pouring yourself into it until you are dry. That is when the transformation begins, not because you choose it, but because your soul refuses to endure another betrayal of itself. The breaking becomes the doorway. At first, this awakening feels lonely. You stop performing, and suddenly the applause is gone. You stop pretending, and suddenly the invitations become fewer. You stop agreeing with everything, and suddenly the people who once called you easy to be around pull away. It hurts. There's no denying that. It feels like loss, like exile, like being stripped bare. But beneath that pain lies a strange relief. You begin to notice a new kind of silence. Not the silence of suppression, but the silence of freedom. You don't have to pretend anymore. You don't have to wear the mask. And in that raw space, where the world no longer showers you with cheap approval, you begin to hear a sound that had been drowned out all along, your own voice. That voice is fragile at first, uncertain, almost timid, but it is yours, and the more you honor it, the stronger it becomes. You start remembering the times you dimmed yourself, and instead of shame, you feel a spark of defiance. Why did you ever bow so low to people who never deserved it? Why did you twist yourself into knots for approval that evaporated like smoke? And this is where the transformation deepens. You realize that the very things that once got you rejected are the things that give you strength. The opinions that made people uncomfortable are the opinions that give you power. The edges that made you too much are the edges that make you unforgettable. You begin to reclaim the pieces of yourself you abandoned, like a soldier gathering weapons left behind after battle. Each piece you pick up makes you heavier, steadier, more whole. What once felt like exile becomes the beginning of your true homecoming. As this shift unfolds, you discover something shocking. People do not need to like you, to respect you. In fact, the very act of choosing yourself boldly, unapologetically, creates a new kind of gravity. Some people will resent it, yes. Some will whisper, roll their eyes, call you difficult, but beneath their discomfort lies an unspoken truth. They cannot ignore you. They may not like you, but they know you. They may disagree with you, but they remember you. Respect begins to form not from being agreeable, but from being unmovable. The power you once begged for in the form of approval now begins to flow toward you naturally because authenticity has a weight that performance never carries, and that weight makes you unshakable in ways being liked never could. The beauty of transformation is not that you become someone new, but that you return to someone ancient within you, someone who was always there before the world taught you to shrink. You realize that every rejection you feared was really a redirection back to yourself. The silence you once avoided becomes sacred space. The solitude you once feared becomes strength. The scars you carry from bending and breaking become the proof that you survived the false life of performance. Each scar tells you, never again. Never again will you dim, twist, or erase yourself to keep the peace of others. This vow is where transformation roots itself deeply. It is not about becoming louder or harsher. It is about becoming aligned. Your thoughts, your words, your choices, all echoing the same truth, regardless of who claps or who leaves. And then, almost paradoxically, something miraculous happens. The moment you stop trying to be liked, you begin to attract what is real. You start to meet people who are not drawn to your mask but to your essence. They may be fewer in number, but they are stronger in presence. These connections are not shallow, they are carved in stone. They come not because you bent, but because you stood tall. And this realization brings the deepest kind of freedom. You no longer fear rejection, because rejection no longer controls you. You no longer crave validation, because validation no longer defines you. The transformation is complete when you understand that losing the approval of others was never a loss. It was the price of regaining your own soul. Respect is born in places most people run from. It begins in the quiet rooms where there is no applause, no validation, no eyes watching, only you and the silence pressing against your chest. In those moments you learn who you are without an audience. You learn whether you can stand when no one is clapping, whether you can hold the line when there is no one to praise you for it. Inner strength is not loud, it is not dramatic. It is not the firework that dazzles for a moment and fades. It is the stone, weathered and scarred, that remains after every storm. It is in the solitude of your decisions that respect is forged, because the world does not see the hundreds of times you chose not to betray yourself. They do not see the late nights where you swallowed the easy way out, and instead carried the weight of your truth. But those choices carve into you like chisels shaping a monument, and eventually, when you stand among others, they can feel it, even if they do not understand why. Scars are the silent testimony of this inner strength. Every refusal, every boundary, every stand you took that cost you something leaves a mark. And though you may feel the sting of those marks when you trace them with memory, they are not signs of weakness. They are evidence of a war fought in the quiet, without witnesses, without medals, without recognition. The scars speak of the times you endured the pain of being misunderstood. Instead of selling your soul for approval, they remind you that you survived what you thought would break you. And in their jagged truth, they become a kind of armor. When you carry them openly, you no longer need to beg for respect. It emanates from you. Because people sense that you have walked through fires they cannot imagine, and yet remain whole. Inner awakening does not feel like victory at first. It often feels like loss, like shedding layers of skin you once thought were necessary. It feels like standing naked in front of the world, stripped of the masks you wore for safety. But as the initial fear fades, something extraordinary happens. You begin to notice the light that pours into the spaces you once kept hidden. You realize that strength is not about becoming invincible. It is about being unafraid to be seen exactly as you are. The awakening is not a sudden explosion, but a gradual alignment, like stars slowly appearing in the night sky. You begin to feel at home in your own presence, no longer rushing to escape into noise or distraction. You discover that solitude is not emptiness. It is clarity. It is the soil where respect grows, rooted in the unshakable truth of who you are when no one is there to witness it. There is a power in silence that few people ever learn to hold. Most run from it because silence exposes everything they try to hide from themselves. But for the awakened, silence becomes a companion. In it they hear not the absence of sound, but the presence of themselves. Silence teaches patience, discipline, and clarity. It teaches that you do not need to fill every void with words or every space with noise. It teaches that you can stand without defending, that you can endure without explaining, that you can simply exist without begging to be understood. And from that silence comes a gravity that others cannot deny. When you walk into a room with this kind of stillness inside you, people feel it before you even speak. They may not know why, but they sense the weight of your presence. That is respect. It does not demand, it does not shout, it simply is. Imagine the strength it takes to hold your ground when the world insists you move. Imagine the courage it requires to say no when every voice around you pushes for yes. These are the moments where inner power reveals itself. It is not about crushing others or imposing your will. It is about the refusal to betray yourself for comfort. That refusal becomes your anchor, and anchors do not bow to waves. People begin to see that you are not swayed by every trend, not shaken by every criticism, not eager to bend at every gust of disapproval. They may not always agree with you, but they know you cannot be manipulated, and in that unshakable stance lies respect. It is not fear, it is not affection, it is not popularity, it is the recognition that your center cannot be moved. This awakening also strips away the illusions of comparison. You stop measuring yourself against who is liked more, who is praised louder, who is followed by bigger crowds. You realize that strength is not in the numbers, but in the weight of your presence. 10,000 people may clap for someone who bends to please them, but one moment of your unwavering truth carries more power than all their applause combined. You stop chasing the mirage of acceptance, and instead build a fortress within. This fortress is not built of walls to keep people out, but of foundations so steady that no storm can tear them down. The respect you gain is not because you sought it, but because you became undeniable. The world respects what it cannot shake, and the awakened self is unshakable, not because it never feels fear or doubt, but because it refuses to surrender to them. In the end, awakening is not about becoming harder, but about becoming clearer. The darkness, the solitude, the scars, they are not curses, but guides. They strip away illusions and leave only the essence. And in that essence lies a quiet strength that does not need to be liked, that does not need constant approval, that does not collapse when misunderstood. This is the strength of presence, the power of authenticity, the weight of a soul aligned with itself, and when people encounter it, even if they never say it aloud, they respect it. For in a world of masks and performances, the rarest and most unshakable thing of all is someone who stands true. So stop asking yourself whether people like you. That question has been the invisible chain around your neck, the subtle poison you've been drinking every day without noticing its effects. To be liked is to live in someone else's story, to become a character written by the expectations of others, performing for their comfort instead of your truth. But when you shift the question, when you ask instead, do they respect me? Everything begins to change. Respect is not given cheaply. It is not tossed to you as a casual gesture. It is earned in the quiet moments when you stand firm, when you refuse to trade your dignity for applause. To be respected is to be acknowledged as someone with gravity, someone whose presence cannot be erased even by dislike. Respect does not require approval, it requires recognition, and recognition, unlike approval, cannot be faked, cannot be bought, cannot be withdrawn on a whim. Respect lingers where being liked evaporates. Think about how quickly people forget the ones they merely liked. Their names vanish into the blur of memory. Their faces fade into the background of countless agreeable encounters. But the people you respected, whether you admired them or even resented them, remain carved in your mind like stone. You may not have always enjoyed them, but you could not ignore them. They had weight, presence, and conviction. That is the power you must choose for yourself, not the fleeting sweetness of being liked, but the enduring echo of respect. And that echo is not created by trying to please everyone. It is born when you stop trying to please at all. It rises out of the unshakable alignment between who you are inside and what you show outside. When the two match, people may not like you, but they will know you, and knowing you will change them, whether they admit it or not. The real revolution is not in reshaping the world to fit your image, but in reshaping yourself so you no longer beg the world for approval. You begin to understand that external validation is a cage disguised as a gift. Every time you chase it, you reinforce your dependence on the shifting moods of others. But when you reclaim your center, when you take back the authority to define your worth, you no longer bow to the crowd. The applause becomes meaningless because you realize you never needed it. The boos lose their sting because they do not define you either. Transformation is not loud, it is not a show. It is silent, internal, and deeply personal. The revolution is in discovering that freedom does not come from being celebrated by others, but from no longer needing their celebration to breathe. When this shift happens, something subtle but profound takes root inside you. You move differently, you speak differently. You no longer rush to fill silence with noise, no longer scramble to soften your edges so that others remain comfortable. Your presence becomes heavier, not because you force it, but because it is no longer diluted. You carry yourself like someone who has nothing to prove, and that weight commands respect before you even open your mouth. People may not always agree with you, but they will lean in when you speak. They may not always celebrate you, but they will remember you when you are gone. That is the quiet, dark power of respect. It bends the room around you without you having to demand it. And it comes not from seeking the world's approval, but from standing so firmly in your own truth that the world cannot move you. There is a liberation in this that cannot be described, only lived. Imagine the relief of no longer performing for anyone, of no longer shrinking to fit into places that were never meant to hold you. Imagine walking into a room without scanning faces for approval, without adjusting yourself to be easier to swallow, without bargaining your authenticity for acceptance. This is what happens when you stop asking to be liked and start choosing to be respected. You discover a life that is lighter because it no longer bends under the weight of endless masks. You discover a soul that is stronger because it no longer fractures under rejection. And you discover a freedom that is deeper than any applause could ever give you. The freedom of finally belonging to yourself. So the question remains, the one only you can answer. Will you continue to live as a prisoner of approval, forever chasing the fragile affection of others? Or will you step into the unshakable weight of respect? The call is not loud. It is not dramatic. It does not come with fanfare. It whispers in the silence of your own heart. And if you listen closely, you will hear it. A reminder that you were never born to be liked. You were born to be real. The real revolution is not in winning the crowd, but in freeing yourself from the need to win them at all. And perhaps, in that quiet defiance, you will finally unlock the dark, immortal power of respect.